Jonathan Pierce had built his reputation as a business genius, the kind of CEO who turned struggling companies into profit machines. For 8 years, he had run Apex Manufacturing with an iron fist and a calculator where his heart should have been. Every quarterly earnings call, every board meeting, every investor presentation showcased the same impressive numbers: costs down, profits up, shareholders happy. But what those spreadsheets never showed was the human cost of those profits. What they never revealed was that every dollar Jonathan Pierce added to his bonus came directly from the pockets of the workers who trusted him. But here is what CEO Pierce forgot. Accounting records do not lie. Payroll systems leave digital trails, and stolen wages eventually demand justice. And when Judge Caprio's courtroom doors opened to reveal the corporate executive himself standing as a defendant, every worker who had been cheated felt a surge of hope that maybe, just maybe, the system actually worked. What you are about to witness is not just a trial, it is the complete dismantling of a man who treated human beings like line items on a balance sheet. The moment when CEO Pierce realizes that his expensive lawyers cannot save him from the consequences of his greed will be absolutely devastating. So if you have watched this far, do not miss the end. Like the video and dive into the story, because this confrontation between corporate greed and unwavering justice will leave you speechless. It is Thursday morning, 10 a.m. sharp, at the Providence Municipal Court. The courtroom is packed with former Apex Manufacturing employees, some still wearing their work uniforms, others dressed in their best clothes because this is the most important day they have had in years. And there, at the defendant's table, sits Jonathan Pierce in a $3,000 suit, his Rolex gleaming, looking as if he is about to negotiate a business deal rather than answer for crimes against the people who built his fortune. The bailiff's voice cuts through the tension. The state of Rhode Island versus Jonathan Pierce, Chief Executive Officer of Apex Manufacturing. Judge Caprio looks down from his bench with an expression that suggests he has already read through hundreds of pages of documentation. Mr. Pierce, you stand accused of wage theft, fraud, embezzlement, and labor law violations affecting over 300 employees over a period of 6 years. These are serious charges. How do you respond? Pierce stands with the casual confidence of someone accustomed to boardrooms, not courtrooms. Your Honor, I appreciate this opportunity to address what I believe are fundamental misunderstandings about business operations and compensation structures. When we examine the full context of how Apex Manufacturing operates, it will become clear that these allegations stem from employees who did not fully understand their employment agreements. Judge Caprio's eyebrow raises. Misunderstandings about employment agreements. Mr. Pierce, the indictment alleges that you systematically stole over $2.3 million in wages from your employees. That seems fairly clear. Pierce's smile is practiced and condescending. Your Honor, I run a manufacturing company with complex compensation models. What some employees perceived as stolen wages were actually proper deductions, performance adjustments, and contractual fee structures that every worker agreed to when they signed their employment contracts. Judge Caprio leans forward. Contractual fee structures. Mr. Pierce, according to the evidence, you charged your employees for uniforms, safety equipment, training materials, and even for the time they spent clocking in and out. Federal labor law explicitly prohibits most of these deductions. Are you claiming you were unaware of these laws? For the first time, irritation crosses Pierce's face. Your Honor, I am claiming that running a competitive manufacturing operation requires cost management at every level. If we provided everything for free, we would not be profitable, and then no one would have jobs at all. Cost management? Judge Caprio picks up a thick folder. Let me ask you directly. According to payroll records, you required employees to purchase their uniforms from a company that you personally owned. Those uniforms cost each employee approximately $300 per year. Is that accurate? Pierce's jaw tightens. Your Honor, that company provided high-quality uniforms at competitive prices. Employees had the option to purchase uniforms elsewhere if they chose. Option? Judge Caprio's tone sharpens. We have emails from your HR department explicitly stating that employees who did not purchase uniforms from your approved vendor would be written up for dress code violations. How is that an option? Pierce shifts in his seat. Your Honor, we maintained quality standards. The approved uniforms met safety specifications that protected our workers. Protected your workers? Or protected your profits? Judge Caprio opens another document. Mr. Pierce, your uniform company had profit margins of 68%. You were charging your employees nearly double what those uniforms actually cost. And according to financial records, your uniform company generated $430,000 in revenue over 6 years. All of that money came from your employees' paychecks. How do you justify that? Pierce's confidence begins to waver. Your Honor, the uniform company operated as a separate business entity. Any profits it generated were legitimate business income. Legitimate? Mr. Pierce, you forced your employees to pay inflated prices for uniforms they were required to wear, and then you pocketed the profits. That is not legitimate business. That is wage theft, dressed up in corporate language. Subscribe to Judge Stories if you believe workers deserve every dollar they earn, and CEOs should face consequences for exploitation. Judge Caprio takes a deep breath. Mr. Pierce, let us review the full scope of what you did to your employees. Beyond the uniform scheme, you also charged workers for mandatory safety training. Federal law requires employers to provide safety training at no cost to employees, yet you charged each worker $250 for training courses. True or false? Pierce straightens his posture. Your Honor, we provided premium training programs that exceeded minimum requirements. Employees benefited from that enhanced training. Benefited? Judge Caprio's voice grows colder. We have testimony from employees who sat through 4-hour training videos that could have been completed in 90 minutes. They were still charged the full $250. Meanwhile, your company deducted that amount from their first month's paycheck, often leaving employees with almost nothing to take home after training fees, uniform costs, and other deductions. Pierce's face reddens. Your Honor, those training programs ensured workplace safety. We had an excellent safety record. An excellent safety record that you forced your employees to pay for? Mr. Pierce, in 6 years, you collected over $190,000 in training fees from workers who were legally entitled to receive that training for free. Where did that money go? Into the training budget, Your Honor. We reinvested those funds into improving our safety programs. Reinvested? Judge Caprio picks up a financial statement. Mr. Pierce, according to your company's tax returns, you claimed those training fees as revenue, not as reinvestment. You reported them as income and paid yourself bonuses based on that revenue. You literally paid yourself bonuses with money you stole from your employees. The color drains from Pierce's face. Your Honor, executive compensation is based on overall company performance. Those bonuses were approved by our board of directors. Your board of directors, Mr. Pierce, you control 51% of the company's stock. You essentially approved your own bonuses funded by wage theft. Pierce's desperation starts to show. Your Honor, you are painting a picture that ignores the economic realities of running a manufacturing business. We operated on thin margins. Every cost mattered. Thin margins? Judge Caprio leans back. Let us examine your thin margins. According to financial statements, Apex Manufacturing showed consistent profitability throughout your tenure, Meanwhile, your personal compensation increased from $400,000 per year to $1.2 million per year. How exactly were you operating on thin margins? Pierce's voice rises. I increased company profitability. I created shareholder value. That is what CEOs are supposed to do. Create shareholder value by stealing from your workers? Judge Caprio picks up another document. Mr. Pierce, let us discuss another aspect of your compensation scheme. You implemented a policy requiring employees to clock in using a fingerprint scanner located a 10-minute walk from the employee entrance. Workers had to arrive, walk to the scanner, clock in, and then walk back to their workstations. But according to your payroll system, employees were not paid for the time spent walking to and from the scanner. They were only paid from the moment they reached their workstations. True or false? Pierce's hands clench. Your Honor, that is standard practice in many manufacturing facilities. Work time begins when employees reach their assigned positions. Standard practice, Mr. Pierce? Over 300 employees walked an average of 20 minutes per day for which they were not compensated. Over the course of a year, that amounts to approximately 80 hours of unpaid work per employee. Multiply that by 6 years and 300 employees, and you stole roughly 144,000 hours of labor at an average wage of $15 per hour. That is over $2 million in stolen wages. How do you justify that? Pierce's voice cracks. Your Honor, those numbers are exaggerated. The actual time was much less. Much less, Mr. Pierce? We have security camera footage showing exactly how long employees spent walking from the entrance to the time clock and then to their stations. We have GPS tracking data from the time clock system itself. The numbers are not exaggerated, they are documented fact. Judge Caprio opens yet another folder. But the time clock scheme was not even your most egregious violation. Let us discuss what you did with overtime pay. According to federal law, non-exempt employees must be paid time and a half for hours worked beyond 40 per week. Yet according to testimony from dozens of employees, you implemented a policy requiring workers to clock out after 8 hours, continue working off the clock, and then clock back in the next day. Is that accurate? Pierce's face goes pale. Your Honor, that is a complete mischaracterization. We had strict policies against working off the clock. Strict policies? Judge Caprio's tone becomes severe. Mr. Pierce, we have emails from your operations manager instructing supervisors to ensure that employees clocked out at exactly 8 hours to avoid overtime costs, with the explicit instruction that production quotas must still be met. Those supervisors then pressured workers to stay late off the clock to meet those quotas, and when workers complained, they were threatened with termination. Your Honor, if supervisors violated company policy, that is on them, not on me. On them? Mr. Pierce, you personally wrote the memo establishing production quotas that were mathematically impossible to achieve in a 40-hour work week. You created a system designed to force employees to work unpaid overtime. That is not a supervisor problem. That is a CEO problem. Pierce's composure finally breaks. Your Honor, I was trying to keep the company competitive. We had to keep costs down or we would lose contracts to overseas manufacturers. I was protecting American jobs. Protecting American jobs? Mr. Pierce, you were exploiting American workers. There is a difference. Judge Caprio picks up a bound transcript. Let us listen to a recording from a meeting between you and your operations team. This was recorded 3 years ago when several employees complained about unpaid overtime. The courtroom falls silent as the audio recording begins. Pierce's recorded voice is cold and calculating. Listen carefully. Our labor costs are killing our margins. We need to find ways to increase productivity without increasing payroll. His operations manager responds, Sir, we are already at maximum efficiency. If we want more production, we need to pay overtime. No, no overtime. Here is what we do. Establish production quotas that require 9 or 10 hours of work to complete. Tell supervisors that anyone who cannot meet quotas is not performing adequately. Then make it clear that clocking overtime without approval will result in disciplinary action. Workers will figure out what they need to do. Sir, that is asking employees to work off the clock. That is illegal. Pierce's laugh is dismissive. It is only illegal if we tell them to do it. We are just setting performance standards. How employees choose to meet those standards is up to them. If they decide to stay late without clocking in, that is their choice. But sir, if the Department of Labor investigates... The Department of Labor is understaffed and overwhelmed. They investigate hundreds of complaints per year and can only prosecute a fraction of them. The odds of them targeting us are minimal, and even if they do investigate, we have plausible deniability. We have policies against working off the clock. We can claim we did not know employees were violating those policies. What about the employees who refuse to work unpaid overtime? Document performance issues. Create a paper trail. Make their lives difficult enough that they either comply or quit. We will replace them with workers who understand what it takes to keep their jobs. The recording ends. The courtroom sits in absolute silence, the weight of Pierce's words hanging in the air like a toxic cloud. Judge Caprio's voice cuts through the quiet. Mr. Pierce, you just heard yourself explicitly describe a plan to force employees to work without pay while maintaining plausible deniability. How do you explain this? Pierce's face has gone ashen. Your Honor, that conversation was about setting high performance standards. I never explicitly told anyone to work off the clock. You never explicitly told them? Mr. Pierce, you created impossible quotas, threatened employees who could not meet them, and forbade them from clocking overtime. What exactly did you think would happen? Your Honor, I expected employees to work more efficiently during their scheduled hours. Work more efficiently? Mr. Pierce, according to industrial engineering analysis, the quotas you set required an average of 9.3 hours to complete. There is no efficiency gain that would allow someone to complete 9.3 hours of work in 8 hours. You knew this. Your operations manager told you this, and you implemented the policy anyway because you wanted free labor. Pierce's voice drops to barely a whisper. I was trying to save the company. Save the company? Mr. Pierce, Apex Manufacturing was profitable every single year under your leadership. You were not saving the company. You were padding profit margins so you could justify larger bonuses for yourself. Judge Caprio leans forward. Let us talk about one more thing. Maria Santos worked for Apex Manufacturing for 4 years as a machine operator. She was a single mother supporting 2 children. According to her testimony, she regularly worked 10 to 11-hour days but was only paid for 8 because of your off-the-clock policy. Over 4 years, she estimates she worked approximately 2,000 hours of unpaid overtime. At her wage of $16 per hour, you owe her $48,000 in wages plus penalties. Do you remember Maria Santos? Pierce looks down. I do not personally know every employee, Your Honor. You do not remember her, because Maria Santos remembers you very clearly. She remembers the day she asked her supervisor about overtime pay and was told that if she wanted to keep her job, she should stop asking questions. She remembers choosing between feeding her children and speaking up about wage theft. She remembers wondering if anyone in power would ever care that she was being exploited. Do you want to know what happened to Maria Santos? Pierce remains silent. Maria Santos lost her apartment because she could not afford rent with her reduced wages. She and her children moved in with her elderly mother, 4 people, in a 1-bedroom apartment. One of her children fell behind in school because they had no space to study. Her daughter developed anxiety because of the financial stress she witnessed at home. All of this happened because you decided that your bonus was more important than her paycheck. Pierce's voice cracks. Your Honor, I never meant for anyone to suffer. You never meant for anyone to suffer. Mr. Pierce, you designed a system specifically to extract unpaid labor from your employees. You knew they would suffer. You just did not care because you were too busy counting your money. Judge Caprio takes a deep breath. Jonathan Pierce, you came into this courtroom wearing your expensive suit and your Rolex, believing that your lawyers and your corporate language would somehow make wage theft sound like legitimate business practice. But in this courtroom, we call things by their real names. You did not implement cost management strategies. You stole from your workers. You did not create performance standards. You exploited desperate people who needed their jobs. You did not protect American jobs. You betrayed American workers. Pierce's face crumbles. Your Honor, please, I can make this right. I will pay back every dollar. I will change company policies. Just give me the chance to fix this. Fix this? Mr. Pierce, 300 employees went home with smaller paychecks because of you. They struggled to pay rent, to buy groceries, to provide for their families. You cannot fix that by writing a check. You stole years of financial security from people who trusted you. Judge Caprio's voice becomes firm. For systematic wage theft totaling over $2.3 million, I am imposing a sentence of 4 years in federal prison. For fraud in creating illegal deduction schemes, an additional 18 months. For violating federal labor laws on a massive scale, an additional 12 months. Your sentences will run consecutively for a total of 6.5 years in federal custody. The courtroom erupts in gasps and whispers. Pierce staggers backward. 6.5 years? Your Honor, I have a family. I have responsibilities. I am not a violent criminal. You have responsibilities? Mr. Pierce, what about Maria Santos's responsibilities to her children? What about the 300 workers who had responsibilities to their families? You treated their financial security as irrelevant. Now you will experience what they experienced. The consequences of someone else deciding that your needs do not matter. Additionally, you are hereby ordered to pay full restitution of $2.3 million plus penalties and interest, totaling approximately $3.8 million. Apex Manufacturing is placed under federal monitoring to ensure compliance with all labor laws. You are permanently barred from holding any executive position in any company, and you will forfeit all bonuses received during the period of wage theft, an additional $1.2 million. Pierce's legs buckle. Your Honor, that will bankrupt me. I will lose everything. Judge Caprio's response is measured but devastating. You will lose everything? Mr. Pierce, your employees lost everything while you built your fortune. They lost their financial security, their dignity, their trust in the system. Now you will learn what it feels like to lose what you built through exploitation. The bailiffs move forward. For the first time in 8 years, Jonathan Pierce is no longer a powerful CEO. He is just another convicted criminal facing the consequences of his greed. As the handcuffs click around his wrists, the expensive suit and Rolex suddenly look like props in a costume that no longer fits. Judge Caprio delivers his final words. Mr. Pierce, you built your career on the belief that workers were disposable resources to be exploited for profit. You created elaborate schemes to steal wages while maintaining corporate respectability. Today, you learned what every worker already knows. Labor has dignity, wages are sacred, and theft is theft, regardless of whether it happens in a dark alley or a corporate boardroom. No amount of business jargon can disguise what you did. You stole from people who could not afford to be stolen from, and now you will pay the price. Within hours, news of Pierce's conviction spreads through the community. Former Apex Manufacturing employees gather outside the courthouse, some crying with relief, others celebrating that justice finally came. The company itself, now under new leadership and federal oversight, begins the process of making employees whole, recalculating back wages, and rebuilding trust. Sometimes the most powerful lesson about justice comes from watching someone who treated workers as numbers on a spreadsheet discover that those numbers represent human lives, human struggles, and human dignity that cannot be reduced to profit margins. Jonathan Pierce walked into that courtroom believing his wealth and position would protect him. He walked out in handcuffs, headed to federal prison for 6.5 years, bankrupt and disgraced, where he will have plenty of time to reflect on the true cost of treating human beings as expendable resources in the pursuit of profit. If you enjoyed this story and believe that workers deserve every dollar they earn, and CEOs should face real consequences for wage theft, please like and subscribe to this channel. Check out the other stories where we examine what happens when justice finally catches up with those who built their fortunes on the backs of exploited workers. See you in the next video. Stay healthy.